was Vivian Reese Harned. My rank is captain in the U.S. Coast Guard, retired. In the early days of before World War II, actually, when the ships were patrolling the East Coast. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I used to be very intrigued with the fact that the Coast Guard ships were going up and down the East Coast in those days, you know, getting some of the ships that were coming in from Europe. And so I just sort of got involved with the Coast Guard. I liked it. So I had been teaching school, which I detested, but in those days, a woman graduate of college, about the only thing you could be was a teacher. So I guess I was looking for a way out, I'm not sure. But at any rate, I had always wanted to travel and have adventures. So when I saw that they were enlisting people in the Coast Guard, I thought, well, now that's the thing I want to do. So I went down, and then the funny thing is, I went down to apply for an officer's, billet. And at that time, they were all filled up, and they said that I would have to go in as enlisted and then go up. Well, when you teach school, you know very well you have to know whether you're coming back in September or you aren't coming back. So I thought, well, the best thing I could do, so I enlisted in the Coast Guard, much to my mother's distress. Being accepted into the service to start with, I went to Pittsburgh and I enlisted, I told you, because the officers' billets were filled, so I enlisted. And so I think I knew that I did not want to stay home. When the guys left, I'm going with them, that's all there is to it. And so when I went down and enlisted in Pittsburgh and went into the Coast Guard, that was a great occasion for me. We went to Palm Beach, Florida. That's where I was sent for training, and I can't recall, but I don't think there was a whole lot of people there. Not, like happened later, because we were in a hotel in Palm Beach, and I cannot remember there was a big crowded thing like in later years, it just out of sight. No, it was, I think in the Coast Guard especially, it was sort of a slow draw. In boot camp, we went to, in my area in Palm Beach, my God, we were outside on the beach all the time. And, but having been a teacher, a lot of times I didn't get in on any of that because they used me a lot in training and things like that. But it was wonderful in Palm Beach. We just had Biltmore Hotel. We really roughed it. Yeah, no, that was wonderful. And then having been in with this group of people that were doing the teaching and everything, I had my choice of where I wanted to be transferred, and I wanted to be transferred to New York City. So that's when I went to work up in New York. So I went to the 3rd Coast Guard District, and I worked up there as a storekeeper. I tell you, it was very difficult. And you have to remember now, I had been a school teacher and had a very good education. And a lot of the men, of course, were enlisted. A lot of enlisted men had good educations also. But I mean, the majority of them did not. It was very difficult. I was transferred to New York City. And mostly there was a resentment of us coming in, because most of us had gone to school and came in at least as a petty officer or more, not as a senior. And so there was a lot of resentment. And it was hard. Some of them didn't want to work for you at all. Some worked for you resentfully. Other ones were very glad to work for you. I was very fortunate when I went to New York City that I worked for a warrant officer who was in a bank here in Washington, D.C., as a matter of fact. Very, very wonderful man. And he sort of took me under his arm, because I was probably the only college graduate enlisted person at that time. And he sort of looked after me a little bit. It was very, very good. But it was a wonderful job in that I got to meet everybody in the whole world had to come in and get paid their travel voucher. I got to meet a lot of people in the Coast Guard, people that I even know today that's stationed in New York that came down and got paid. And I stayed in that even though I got commissioned. When I wanted to transfer to San Francisco and they wouldn't let me go, I went to OCS. And you know where they sent me? Here. Washington. Oh my God. But at any rate, I enjoyed every day I was in the Coast Guard. I stayed in the Coast Guard until 1946 when I got out, but I stayed in the reserves. So I had very interesting jobs. I've been overseas and back and inside out and upside down and everything in between those times. But I always stayed in the reserve all those years. Even when I was in Japan, I still was, well, I went over there with the Army in 47, I guess, 47, 49. Japanese were wonderful people, yeah. We lived in a hotel in downtown Tokyo. It was a wonderful experience, beautiful country, traveling. And I had met an Air Force fellow on the ship going over, and I used to travel up to Sendai and around in there on the weekends. They always had big parties and everything. We had a wonderful time. And I had a really good job. I worked for the Transportation Corps and statistical clerk, so I had a very good job. And I stayed there for 2 years or so. And in fact, I stayed there until they started bringing the women, the wives, over from Korea over into Japan, and I gave up because I don't do well with wives. And they came in and sort of hogged things over, so I thought, oh, I'll just go home. So I went back to Washington. And I stayed in the reserves until I retired at 60 years old.